you fill in. All right. Guys, we're live. I have interrupted my Saturday night rum drinking because I just saw on social media that Pastor Pawlowski was arrested. So I've invited a few guests. We're doing a very quick ad hoc live stream here. Brandon is here. He's our chief of staff here at the Libertarian Party, and apparently he also drinks rum on Saturday night. So you might get an impassioned and less than PG rantings from us, let's say, or greater than PG. Let's just say this live stream may not be fit for general audiences. All right, trigger warning, jazz hands, whatever. Now we're waiting, Brandon. Before you get a word in edgewise, I just want to say what I told you before, which is that I'm on Mountain Time. Okay. Hey, here's a pet peeve of mine. We got Keith McIntyre coming. I'm going to add him into the stream here. We're going to get to Keith in a second, but right now I just need to get out my pet peeve here as a podcast guy, as a live stream guy who lives in his own time, Mountain Time. For some reason, I don't know. I feel like
we've got some feedback here. I'm getting a word in. We got to get rid of this feedback.
Hold on. Okay, there we go. Keith has muted his mic. That's what was happening. Yeah. All right. These are all the pet peeves of live streaming when you're not a professional broadcaster. I'm on Mountain Time. It's 7:10 here in Alberta, as the Newfoundlanders like to call us. And out east, it's Eastern Time. Now, the Laurentian elites always go by Eastern Time. I got to set everything I do by Eastern Time because everyone's out east. And so we got to cater to the east. So I'm setting it by east. Now, apparently, Brandon, you're not even on Eastern Time. You're on Atlantic Time, but you still have to know it's easier for you to figure out from Eastern Time than from Mountain Time. If I were to say we're going at 7:10 Mountain Time, you'd have to probably do some Googling and figuring stuff out, but it's a lot easier. Am I wrong here? Is this just another way that the Laurentian elites are ruling us?
You were wrong, because before we went live, you actually accused me of having been on Eastern Time, which I got to say.
Well, I accused you. I just assumed. I assumed you were a Laurentian elite, and I assumed you were on Eastern Time. And Brandon, I apologize for that. I should have known better. You're part of the Libertarian Party. You're not a Laurentian elite. You maybe want to be part of the Laurentian elite, but you're not. But hey, listen, guys, we have Keith McIntyre
You're peppered
here.
up. I've never seen you like this.
Okay? Never seen. This is going to be an interesting podcast for this. This is either going to launch my political career or tank it right here, folks.
We're going to the moon.
Tuned.
Yeah,
we're going to the moon. Now, look, hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
Brandon, I'm going to let you get a word in edgewise here, but I'm not done my initial rantings yet because we need to properly introduce Keith here, because Keith is just coming from the British Columbia Libertarian Party AGM. He was running for leader. We're going to break news here one way or the other. We're the first people that are going to learn whether Keith McIntyre is indeed now the leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada, replacing the previous leader, or whether someone else is. Keith, unmute yourself. Give us the news.
All right. Yes, I am coming direct from a 5-hour plus online AGM.
Yes.
I am the new BC Libertarian leader. So
congratulations.
Yeah. Right. Cheers to that. Keith, welcome.
Yeah, Don Wilson has done a great job over the last few years, and we had such a strong showing in the election, and it was time he decided he was going to step down. So I put my name up as for leader, and here we are.
We're happy to introduce you on a national level. Welcome aboard. Happy to see some new leadership.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. And Don did a great job. And, he stepped away when very big of him to step away. I need to do that probably at some point. I need to do that very soon, but I'm fired up right now. I need someone to hand the baton off to. Who's it going to be? It can't be Keith now because he's the leader of the BC party. I guess I'm gonna have to find someone else to hand the baton off to. All right, here's what got me fired up this evening, and it ruined the final moments. My wife is working night shifts tonight. She's going to the ER. It's an absolute hellscape there of people lining up and getting seen for everything. There's a lot of sick people out there right now, and it's not just COVID, it's everything else that goes along. They're short-staffed. The nurses have been, by the way, guys, it's Nurses Week this week. The nurses have been the gun here in Alberta, at least. I've never seen it so busy. It's been crazy this last month. And it's not, like I said, it's not just COVID, but it's all the crap that goes along, I assume, with the government lockdowns. Like right now in my little community, we've been chasing arsonists around. We've fought, I don't know how many structure fires over the last month. It's crazy amount. One for sure was an arsonist. Another one is a suspected arsonist. This guy keeps going around, or a kid, whatever. He keeps lighting up decks, and one house burnt already, and 3 other houses almost burnt. We're fighting grass and brush fires. Some of them look suspicious. We've got domestic violence. We've got all this crap happening right now. It feels like society is just holding on by a thread, like the very thin veneer that holds us all together and keeps us peaceful and from descending into utter barbarism is on the verge of breaking right now. And then I see today on the just like literally 45 minutes ago, maybe, this picture from I got this email from Rebel Media, and then I saw Maxime Bernier tweet out this picture, and I'll just put the picture up here, and it was just utterly infuriating. Let me put the picture up here so you guys can see it. This is Pastor Art Pawlowski, who defied a public order, I guess, and opened up his church to a church service today. They didn't arrest him at the church. They followed him onto this highway. There was 6 vehicles. There was an AHS unit. There was SWAT and tactical medics standing by. I'm trying to figure out how, like, put myself in the shoes of one of those EMS people and have to sit there and watch this go on, and what I would do. And it would just look, guys, I grew up with this family story about how my great grandfather and grandmother fled Stalinist Russia. They were being persecuted for their religion. They were, there was all these arbitrary rules and control being exerted. Some of their kids died during their escape from communist Russia. And they fled to Canada, land of the free. And
not so much.
And here we are today.
Tim, could I get you to talk a little bit about 2 issues in particular that I'm curious to hear your take on? Because one, you're a first responder, so I'm kind of curious about some of the subsidiary issues that are coming from a health perspective because of the lockdown. It's great to avoid COVID, and I'm all for it. I wear masks, I wash, I disinfect. I'm all for avoiding COVID. But what are some of the subsidiary issues that you're seeing that come from the lockdown? And also, I'm kind of curious because from a religious perspective, I can tell you about my own infuriating impulses to something like this, but you're actually an atheist.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of curious about your take from an atheist perspective in terms of the reduction of people's freedom. So if you could talk about those 2 issues, I'd be curious to hear your take.
All right. Well, I'll start with the last one. Yes, I am an atheist. I'm not even a big fan of Pastor Art. I did like the video where he tossed AHS and the cops out on their butts and called them Nazis and fascists. Thought that was awesome. But look, I'm not a fan of what he's preaching and that sort of thing. But I have to respect the man for standing up for his rights. And yes, I'm not a pot smoker either. And it embarrasses me to say this, but I'm not even a gun owner. And yet I have been defending, I cashed in my freaking retirement, guys, to run for prime minister to defend the freedom of people who smoke pot and shoot guns and practice religion. Okay. When I see people being oppressed, that lights me up. This is the world my kids are inheriting. This is what they have to live in. It's not going to stop with the freedoms that I don't even partake in, like religion and guns and drugs or whatever. It's not going to end with that. It's going to continue. I mean, you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. So it infuriates me to see someone being oppressed. And what is his crime? He's rendering comfort and words of compassion and comfort to people going through a difficult time. There are so many people going through a difficult time right now under this lockdown. I see it. I'm on the front lines of this pandemic. COVID is a real thing. It's serious. You know, I see people dying of COVID and it, you know, in rough shape from it. But even more concerning to me as a healthcare provider is the emergencies of isolation and loneliness,
Right.
and crushing of people's spirits that affects them physically. And it shows up in domestic violence. It shows up in drug abuse. It shows up in overdoses. You know, it shows up. I'm seeing more and more suicides, a crazy amount of suicides lately. We're, like I said, we've been chasing arsonists around this county for the last few weeks. And I have to believe that the mental stress and boredom and loneliness, whatever it is, the environment that of oppression that has descended upon us like a cloud of satanic evil, pardon my atheist rantings into the religious realm here, but that's ultimately what it feels like. I have to believe that cloud of satanic evil that is upon us is at least contributing to a lot of the things that I'm seeing out there. So, you know, here's a pastor who is rendering some solace to people. Okay. He is, people are coming to his church to get their tanks filled up, to feel better about their lives and to be connected with some meaning that's bigger than themselves. All of that I totally, you know, resonate with. And that is considered a crime. You have to be isolated and hermetically sealed in your matrix pods. You have to be fed whatever they put on that screen, a constant stream of government and mainstream media propaganda. And that's the matrix we live in, and be happy with it. And don't ever question the matrix, and don't ever get out of that hermetically sealed thing. And this is all about control. It's all about treating you as chattel, as tax livestock, as objects to milk for power, to milk for money. And yeah, sorry, I might have gone off your question. I think your first question was, what am I seeing out there?
I think you're. Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask? I want to ask, you know, because I don't see any of this in the CBC media, that there's a bunch of arsonists going around and domestic abuse. Like, how do we know this is actually real? And this is the problem with the media right now, is they're reporting on a very, very cursory level, and you're on the front lines and you're seeing what's happening. And the problem is, by the time these things bubble up to the media, the damage has already been done. There is a lot of arson going on in the Okanagan too, and you see it, and you're like, hey, what is going on here? And I agree with you. I grew up going to Catholic school. I think a lot of religious organizations are very authoritarian and take advantage of people. But on the other hand, a lot of them do a great deal of community good. And again, it doesn't matter if I believe in what this pastor is doing. He's a very aggressive type of person. I actually know a couple of people that have known him on a level, and he is a very aggressive person. But the point is, and I question, why is he the only one in a city the size of Calgary that's being targeted? We have a pastor in Kelowna. He actually apologized for taking 2 weeks off at one point due to the restrictions, but he's been having services in an enclosed space in Kelowna with, I think, 75 to 100 people for the last year and a bit. He's never been arrested. And I would feel like BC should be a more authoritarian state than Alberta. So I grew up in Alberta. I lived there for 34 years, and I can't understand what's going on there.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you why he was arrested. He was arrested, and Pastor Coates at the Grace Life Church over by Spruce Grove, they were arrested because they were getting attention, and they were publicly pushing back, and it was a spectacle. Their civil disobedience was a spectacle. And so they had to be made an example of by the state, because you can't, it's one thing to quietly flout the rules and go about your business and say that's stupid and, not make a big deal about it. But it's another thing to them to say, this is stupid. You're Nazis and fascists, and I will not succumb to you, and I will protest you, and I will push back, and I will make a stink, and I will not stand for this. And you got to remember, Pastor Art comes from a communist country. I think he came from Hungary or Romania or something.
Or Poland,
and
maybe?
maybe it was Poland. Yeah. One of those Eastern European countries that had communism. And, that is fresh in his mind. And this is sparking something in him that he's seen before, and he's pushing back hard. And God bless him for doing that. And, Hansi here says, I'm a closet theist. Well, maybe I am. I don't know. Could be. My mom certainly prayed for me before her death. And a lot of people praying for me there, Hansi. I grew up in a Christian house, and I'm coming around, maybe I'm coming around.
But with the making the noise, so you look at the similar situation with the Whistle Stop Cafe in Alberta, which has been vehemently opposed. They finally, for the first time, got shut down officially. I think they were as noisy or more noisy than either of the churches, but the restaurant kind of let it go for a really long time. And was it just that I don't follow the Alberta media as much as BC, but were they just not noisy enough, or is there something targeted towards the religious?
Well, look, they've clamped down on the Whistle Stop as well. Recently, I think it was raided a couple days ago. So it seems like maybe they're clamping down now, and it could be in correlation with we need, they're firm believers that we need this big three-week lockdown here in Alberta. They just implemented a new lockdown regime. I think it takes effect as of Monday or something like that. And this is probably them saying, look, we're serious about this lockdown, and we have to make an example of the most visibly disobedient people. And so that's what they're doing, is strong arming them. But I mean, look, I'm a fairly moderate, even-tempered guy. I'm an atheist. And when I saw that photo, and let me put it up again here for everyone to see, this photo made me absolutely outraged. Here's a guy on his knees in traffic, big spectacle, being locked up for exercising his faith. And I have to believe
one of the Rebel News, he was being dragged down the street, on his knees.
I saw that picture too.
Let me ask you, gentlemen.
So I have to believe that this is a very risky move on Kenny's behalf of clamping down harder on these people, because the Albertans are only going to take so much. They're only going to take so much of this.
But as a federal politician, Kenny is a federalist. That his loyalties lie with the Federal Conservative Party of Canada. And if you watch what he did when he went with his new marketing things, Stop the Spike, and immediately Michelle Rempel is online crying for Alberta and causing a federal issue. And that is the real trouble with Kenny, because he appears as he's somebody who loves freedom, but then he continues to play these political games, and it's excruciating to watch as an outsider.
Well, here you go. Amelia says that they arrested the guy from Whistle Stop 2 hours ago. They took him away, so they're taking all these guys. So that is right in time with when Pastor Art was taken away. So this seems like it was a coordinated effort to me to clamp down and send a strong message before the lockdown that we will not tolerate disobedience. And the question is, are Albertans going to tolerate this lockdown and this heavy-handedness? That remains to be seen. More and more people are pushing back. But
let me play devil's advocate with a couple of atheists here. I'm outnumbered metaphysically here by the two of you, but to what extent do we have personal responsibility to mitigating our impact of the pandemic? So, I mean, the three of us are all against lockdown, so there's no issue there. But it seems to me as though we do have some sort of a personal responsibility to mitigate, to reduce the potential where we could be causing the spread of the virus.
Yep. Yep.
So,
well, yeah, the first thing we do to mitigate harm is we don't cause harm, right? So the first thing we do is we don't initiate force, we don't violate property rights, we don't use force to control other people, because people need to get groceries, they need to put food on the table, they need to go to work, they need to provide for their family. That's pretty damn important to life. So that's the first thing we don't do. Then the next thing we don't do is we don't go out when we have symptoms of COVID. Okay, so if there's evidence that we have COVID, yeah, stay home. Let me tell you the people that I'm finding as a paramedic who are COVID positive. I always ask them how they think they get it, and they always have a theory about a choice that they made that caused them to get it, that they did something or exposed themselves somehow. They take personal responsibility for getting it. Okay, and a lot of them are they're in denial, quite frankly. So these are people actually that follow all the rules, and there was a CDC study that came out, I think, back in October, that showed that 85% of people, 70% of people who got COVID always wore a mask, and 85% often wore a mask, and only 4% or 3.9% of people who got COVID never wore a mask. So 3.9% of people that are getting and spreading COVID are anti-maskers. The rest are mostly people that are trying to follow the rules the best they can, and they're still spreading COVID around. And that's exactly what matches up with my experience as a paramedic treating people. I went to a patient the other day who, large lady, about 400 pounds, type 1 diabetic, all the risk factors and comorbidities. Like, this woman should have been. I saw
a post to your effect.
She should have been fastidious about protecting herself from this virus, right? So we get to her, and her sats are in the dump, and I would be surprised if she's alive right now. But she was in denial that she had COVID. Okay, she had a cold for the past 2 weeks. I've had this cold, and I'm getting really tired, and I feel like I can't catch my breath. Yeah, your sats are in the 70%, which is dangerously low. And I'm like, well, have you got tested for COVID? No, I haven't. Well, how do you think you got this cold, right? A cold, by the way, is a coronavirus. So if you're getting a cold, God damn it, you could be getting the coronavirus, because that's literally a coronavirus. But people aren't putting this together for some reason. Oh yeah, my grandson was here. I had him for about 10 days. He had a little bit of a sniffle, bit of a cold, but he didn't have COVID or anything. That's literally what COVID is. It's the sniffles. Okay. It's a little cold in most people, but then it's a fucking deadly disease in people like you. And then she had a daughter and her boyfriend that were living at the house. Yeah. They had a cold and got over it the past week. Oh yeah. They still kept going to work and still kept motoring on with their lives, but they were following all the rules. They were wearing a mask. They were socially distancing. They were doing all that. So these people are following the rules, expecting that the cheesecloth in front of their face is going to protect them and others from COVID. If the government was responsible here, what they would do is a very simple message that these dopey people could understand, which is, look, if you have the sniffles, you could have COVID. Stay home and isolate. Don't go out and spread that shit around. And that's it. Just follow that one rule, and we might get through this unscathed or something like that. But people are like, we're just inundated with a steady stream of rules. Like, your sushi restaurant can be open except on Thursdays and Sundays and every other Wednesday. And in Alberta, it's you can go to church if there's 15 people, but if one of them's dead, only 10 people can be in the church. And if you go outside, only 5 people can be congregated. Like, these there's a steady stream of these nonsensical rules that everyone thinks is going to protect them, that this cheesecloth in front of their face is going to protect them. And of course it's not. And we see that borne out in all the charts, right? In the states that are wide open, the trends are just the same as the states that are locked down and prohibitive. And so, look, it seems like we're going to deal with this regardless. And what we have to do is give people the freedom to try to survive and live their life despite the government lockdowns.
I don't think anybody's under the misunderstanding that wearing a mask will protect you. Well, I mean, maybe some people are, but what I mean to say is, really wearing a mask, the advantage to that is you don't spread it if you're asymptomatic. That's why I say there's a personal responsibility. So I mean,
yeah, but you do spread it if you are symptomatic, even if you have a mask, right? So a cloth mask, it does, protects you from maybe 10% of the.
It doesn't protect you. It protects people around you.
No, it protects other people around you, maybe to 10%. But people don't wear them properly.
I'm going to call you on this, Tim. I'm going to call you on this because you said in one of your posts that we got to stop arguing about numbers and stop arguing about what is happening, and we got to start bringing it back down to personal responsibility. So the question is from Brandon, personal responsibility. And I've said it too many times, but I used to write pandemic simulation software for the Center for Disease Control, and I have extensive knowledge on pandemics and spread. But here is the issue that's happening with these mandates and these measures is it gives people this false sense of security. And I bring it back to an example of the last time I was seriously sick was about 3 years ago when I had a flu. And when I was out for probably a month, and when I got back out into the world, someone wanted to shake my hand. I'm like, oh no, I've recently been sick. I don't think you should shake my hand. He's like, oh, I got the flu shot. And he feels like he's invincible. And so when the government says, if you do this, you do that, you do that, you do that, you're going to be safe. People think that they're going to be safe, and then they take actually more risks than if they didn't do it. And there's an SFU professor who just did a study. It's quite good, and he's a very reasonable guy. And he's showing like the loss of life, the loss of quality of life from the lockdowns that we've done is at a minimum 3 times more costly, and at a maximum 280 times more costly. And the problem is everything with authority, they think that they're doing the right job, and if everyone just follows the rules, it's going to be right.
Yeah, but and the spillover effect of all this confidence in these rules, these scientific rules that are supposed to protect us, is that now we have someone posted today. There's a drive-in in Innisfail, Alberta, that is basically in their health and safety policies mandating vaccines or something like that for employees. Just ridiculous. Okay, now I'm not saying employers don't have that right or whatever. I mean, freedom of association. But of course, without this giant state apparatus, that would never be a thing. I mean, this is a fast food restaurant. And in their post, they say, we're doing our best to what did they say? Bend the curve, okay, of COVID. Well, what are they doing to bend the curve of heart disease? I mean, they sell fucking fried burgers and fries at their place, and they have the audacity to say they're contributing to community health. But that's the point. I mean, freedom is the right to die from fried food or COVID or vaccines or drugs or whatever the hell I choose to die from, and it's none of your damn business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and here in BC, here in BC, I don't know if you guys follow BC that much, but they have now started putting up roadside checks to check to see if you're leaving your health region, and they're pulling people over if they have different license plates. And here's what's scary about it is it's so authoritarian and so coercive. Like, they actually know that they can't enforce it, right? The police they've got people going to Manning Park, and they've got a picture on the news of 10 police cars lined up, and they're stopping everybody. But then they say, and it's kind of like a little bit subversive, they're like, well, we can't actually ask you where you're going. We can ask you where you live, and we can ask you where you're going, but you don't have to say so. All we have to say is you're going somewhere essential. And what the government said was that the RCMP, if they feel like you are breaking the rules, they can give you a ticket, which is obviously unenforceable.
Yeah,
but people
these tickets are getting thrown out apparently. I have I know some people that came back from a business trip to Texas or something like that, and he had to run his business, and they wanted him to isolate for 14 days at home, but he can't. He's got a business to run, so he went to work and just defied the orders. RCMP showed up at his house to check on him. He wasn't there. So they eventually tracked him down and said, listen, you're supposed to be at your home. But they're like, what? But, we can't really give you a ticket. It's kind of unenforceable. Like, they're getting thrown out. But,
why are the politicians doubling down on this? So Shirley Bond is the interim BC Liberal Party leader, and rather than fighting back on this loss of freedom, she's saying, you know, I think we should be probably putting border guards up at the provincial border. Like, they just say whatever they want to get votes.
There's something terribly problematic about it insofar as we do have charter rights. And the charter is very...
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure, actually. Conversely, I'm
our
quite
charter
sure that
is
we no
freaking
longer.
Toilet paper, Brandon. Listen, if you you can no longer here are things that you ought to be embarrassed to say. I'm a progressive. I'm a true conservative. We have charter rights. No, we're done with this nonsense now. This
but it
belief
can be
in the charter
in courts, though. I do find it problematic because if you restrict interprovincial travel, which is what's happening right now in New Brunswick, where I'm my neck of the woods, interprovincial travel is a no-no. You can't do it. That is a violation of the charter rights. So I don't. The legal implications of that are quite extensive. Yes, I'm quite positive. That's my reading of the charter.
It's a violation, notwithstanding feeling insecure.
Well, who wrote?
I mean, what is clause 1?
Who wrote
clause
the Charter of
1? Gives
Rights?
them carte blanche, man.
Who wrote the Charter of Rights? Pierre Trudeau.
Pierre Trudeau.
Like,
he did a great job.
I'm going to put everything in there that I possibly can to give us power if we feel like we need it. It's an illusion of freedom. And the comment there about public safety trumps rights. I disagree. I still think that
I think he was being facetious. I'm sure he was. No one listening to this show believes that.
Fair enough. But and something this lockdown scientist, he's actually an economist, right? And you take into account human behavior. And if this virus is scary enough, and it is a serious disease, I'm not disputing that. Like, I'm definitely keeping my distance from people. I'm washing my hands a little bit more. And that's the human behavior aspect of it. And people will adjust. And if it's a really serious disease, like if we had 5 cases of Ebola in Canada, we'd all stay home, even though that's not a dangerous disease in a country like ours. And that's the thing that the government is not allowing us to do, is allowing our human behavior to kind of take into account. And I'm not saying let's get it's clear that bodies aren't going to pile up, but let's not get to the point where bodies are piling up. But we will adjust our human behavior. If you don't feel safe, you stay home. You don't know me. You don't know my business. You don't know my kids. You don't know my interactions in the community. Don't tell me that I can't run my business.
Well, and there's something else here. I want to get to this comment eventually, but first, before we get to that, we still got to talk about the Constitution here. And I'm just going to pull this up one more time to remind you people, we have a Constitution in Canada. Now, our Constitution includes the Charter of Rights and a number of other documents. And either our Constitution authorized what's happening in this picture, or it's powerless to stop it. Either way, it's not fit to exist. That is my final word on the Constitution. I'm tired of people saying we need to respect the Constitution. The Constitution deserves no respect at this point. It's been powerless.
The Constitution took away our liberty.
Yeah, and what we need, and here Dave Martin, I think, hits on an important key factor here. Citizens can affirm their charter rights. Yes, what we need, the sacred documents aren't enough. Even perfectly, relatively bulletproof sacred documents like the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. has a pretty inviolable wording in its Constitution, right? Like they shall not be infringed, right? They don't have the notwithstanding clause that we do, which notwithstanding an emergency, or I got my feels, or my panties are in a knot, you can have all these rights. But as soon as my panties are in a knot, now we got to take all these rights away. The U.S. doesn't have that, and yet we see the erosion of their liberties there all the time. So the second piece, on top of having the government chained down with a proper constitution, which, by the way, the Libertarian Party would seek constitutional reformation. We would want to rewrite the Constitution to include property rights, to have bulletproof wording, to be chained down. The government needs to be chained the frick down. But that's not enough. In order to be fully chained down, we need a citizenry of libertarians. Okay, they can call themselves liberals or conservatives too, but primarily they have to be libertarian. In other words, they have to value liberty more than security, more than anything else. And until we get that, we're not going to have freedom in Canada. We have to change this culture. We have to make more libertarians. That's the bottom line. Okay.
Actually, just before I forget this thought, I like that a lot. You don't have to switch your political allegiance. You can support libertarian and freedom. If you want to still be a member of the Conservative Party, go ahead. Obviously, the Libertarian Party is better, but
right,
you don't have to make that leap all at once. I like that.
Well, that's right, and I mean, look, conservative and liberal are not philosophies; they're aesthetics. Okay, and by that I mean, look, if you are attracted to the left, it just means that you are more like a mummy. You care about people sharing. You care about the least of these getting looked after. You care about caretaking the family environment. If you're more on the right,
mistakenly,
you're like Dad. When I go out, I'm vigilant about external threats to my family. I'm a boundary enforcer. I focus on gathering resources. These are all things dads do and conservatives do. So you need those two forces to be proper partners at all levels of society, whether it's a family or government or everything in between, or even an organization. Those are collaborative forces, mummies and daddies, and male, feminine and masculine in balance and not at war with each other is what the society needs. But a big government and authoritarianism puts them at war with each other. And so that it's no mistake that at the same time we see high rates of divorce in the family and men and women at each other's throats in divorce court. We see men's rights activists and third wave feminists at each other's throats. At the same time, we see woke culture versus, traditional culture, and left versus right on the political stage. All this is part of the same fractal. We're dividing the feminine and masculine, making them energy, creating toxicity on both the feminine and masculine planes. And the only thing that can save us from all this insanity is liberty. You can be feminine or masculine as long as you respect the liberty of others. You can be liberal or conservative. You can be male or female. You can be feminine or masculine. That's all fine, but you cannot raise a gun and try to control other people. Okay, I wanted to talk, guys.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Keith. Sorry.
Yeah, I completely agree. The divisiveness is where we can stand differently, right? Like the politicians of the day and the big political parties, they know divisiveness sells. They know that let's pick my team, and the team's going to fight it out. And I think at an innate human level, people would rather not do that.
Right, Tim. What did you want to talk about?
Well, okay, I think Justin,
because we got you all riled up.
You got me riled up. It's easy to do. I'm an easy target right now because I've had a few rum, and I saw that picture. And
by the way, there was a second thing I meant to correct you on that. You said I've been drinking some rum as well. No, that's not correct. I've been drinking scotch, not rum. And I'm offended. I'm triggered.
What kind of scotch are you drinking?
I'm a Glenfiddich.
Please tell me it's Lagavulin. Not even Lagavulin. Okay.
If you can find a Bowmore 18 that says chocolate on the front, buy that.
You know what? I've been binging Parks and Rec lately, and I know the character Ron Swanson was developed to kind of lampoon libertarians, but I have a hard time disagreeing with anything Ron Swanson says.
Well, I'll tell you,
I just love that character.
I'm part of being libertarian, and they love him. All the libertarians in America love him. They quote him nonstop, and even the actors. What's his name? I don't recall. Nick something. Anyways,
Nick Offerman.
Yeah. And he's said he's had some sympathies for libertarianism since portraying the character, because there really is quite a bit there. But what do we have in terms of Tim? You wanted to address some of the comment section? Yeah.
Well, I mean, this I think Justin is hitting on an interesting point here. That these lockdowns and everything they're doing right now with the pandemic sets a precedent, so they can use a climate crisis as a reason to violate civil liberties and human rights. And I think he's right on hit the nail on the head. And I've been saying this for over a year. When this first started, I'm like, this you watch what's going to happen. They're going to lock us down. Of course, the carbon footprint and carbon emissions are going to fall. This is like an environmentalist wet dream that is happening right now. I said this over a year ago, and they're going to spin this into a UBI, and they're going to spin this into climate action. And of course, we're seeing that happen right now. So we have the Great Reset, right? Which is, I don't know if you guys have read the book by Klaus Schwab. I have. It's all about environmental green redistributionism, Agenda 2030 type stuff. And, and then of course we have legislation tabled, or I think a bill tabled in the House of Commons for our universal basic income, because there's a lot of people who are on CERB who don't want that to ever end. And it's a great opportunity if you are a progressive, elite, narcissistic Karen who thinks that they can control the world, to get all these things in place because everyone's begging for it.
Well, I want to weigh in a little bit on that because I really do believe in my heart of hearts, I'm an environmentalist. I've got 117% rate of return on my green tech portfolio. Like, I'm an environmentalist. I don't use a dryer, vegan. I don't drive a car. Like, I'm hardcore environmentalist. I'm one of the nut jobs. And when I hear socialist leftists talk about things like, isn't it great in Italy? We now have clear water because of this COVID lockdown. And I think, really? A huge pile of dead bodies is your argument for environmentalism? Like, for me, I think economic opportunity. I don't want to pay a power bill anymore, so I want to invest in solar panels. I think this is a great economic opportunity. I see the Libertarian Party, especially with tort reform, is the greenest of all the parties. But when I see people being braggadocious about how we're more environmentally friendly because of all these dead bodies that are piling up because of these lockdowns and the economic shutdowns, this is the exact reverse of what I think could actually help the environmentalist movement. The environmentalist movement could be propelled by economic opportunity rather than economic shutdown. Like, this is the exact opposite of everything that I've ever wanted.
Well, I said from the beginning. Sorry, Tim. I've said from the beginning too. I felt like this was a climate change play anyway. Like, it obviously is a serious disease, but if you're really passionate about this thing and you kind of watch for an opportunity, and if you remember, like last March, April, May, no cars were driving, no factories were happening. Like, I can't imagine the data that was gathered there. But to the comment that you put up. We have been conditioned to this, right? And we've been conditioned for over a decade that we are a problem on the planet. And
Sure.
Absolutely, humans are, if you agree that the planet isn't abundant, then we are a problem on the planet. And so if someone is in that position of power and they can do something about it, wouldn't they take that chance? So I think I'm going to bet less money than I bet on Dogecoin tonight with Elon Musk's Saturday Night Live episode. But I bet at some point there's going to be a climate emergency and people are going to voluntarily lock themselves in their house for a significant period of time. And they're
going to demonize those of us who carry on living our lives like though they are now. I was writing a blog post today talking about, let me see if I can pull up this picture actually, because it bugged the crap out of me. Here it is. Okay, let's see if I can. I probably can't post it. Never mind. But anyways, there was this, I keep seeing healthcare workers talking about, and there was this post like they're blaming people that are breaking the rules for the spread of COVID, right? Even though all the evidence is it's the people that are following the rules that are largely to blame for the spread, if we're going to place blame anywhere. And it's like, every time you herald us as heroes and then push for lifting restrictions earlier than they should be, save your applause because it feels like a knife in our back or something like that. And, first of all, I got so many problems with that. They're portraying themselves as victims, my fellow colleagues. Okay. I signed up for overwhelming chaos, and that's what I'm getting. Thanks. This is exactly what I signed up for. I didn't want to be sitting around. I mean, that's not why I signed up for this job. I signed up to restore order to chaos and to help people in their time of need. Now, that's not to mean I want houses to burn and I want people to get sick and stuff, but I kind of like confronting those challenges. So I'm not begrudging people for getting sick, first of all, but I'm like, okay, one of the things I realized is who is getting the blame for spreading COVID are people that are breaking the rules who don't even have COVID. Okay. These are people that don't even have COVID. Who's not getting blamed? Are COVID patients getting blamed for spreading COVID? Have you ever heard of a COVID patient being finger wagged saying, how dare you spread COVID around? How dare you, you dirty germ bag? Or are they getting blamed for catching COVID? How dare you go out there and catch COVID and then spread it around?
Or the hospitals getting blamed for putting COVID patients in the hospital?
Right. So
field hospitals.
I'm like, okay, obviously, if COVID patient, you have to be COVID positive to spread COVID around. So obviously, it's COVID. If we're going to blame someone, we should blame people who are sick with COVID. But universally, people who are sick with COVID are portrayed as victims of anti-maskers and people going to protest. People that there's no evidence even have COVID are being blamed for spreading COVID, and the actual people spreading COVID are being heralded as victims. And this is why you're literally killing this person. This person that I picked up on the ambulance got COVID because someone went to a no lockdowns rodeo in Bowdoin last weekend, and it's just utterly insane. So obviously this is all about control. These people don't care about figuring out who's spreading COVID and how they're doing it and what's motivating them and like what are they missing. It's all about controlling everybody else and using these people as pawns. And this is what the left continually does. They continually portray people as victims and use them as objects to feed their own arrogance and control tendencies.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to be somewhat braggadocious at this point, because I did say with respect to the element of control, I predicted it was when the shutdown initially took place. It was late March or April. I had said the end result of this is stagflation by early 2021. And I reposted that on Being Libertarian. I put that on my political candidate page. I reposted it on my personal page. We have stagflation.
We hit stagflation.
Well, you know what? The reality of the situation is, if you look at the price of gold, if you look at the price of nickel, copper, iron, if you look at the price of lumber, all of these things are indicating high levels of inflation. While at the same time, if you look at the jobs report for April, we just shed 200,000 jobs. So I would say, yes, we are in a stagflation scenario. But if you look at the Bank of Canada report, which is what I consider to be very problematic, we only have a 1% increase in stagflation or in inflation. Nobody who's buying their groceries is seeing just one
BS.
Utterly BS, which is a very politically correct way of saying the way I feel about it. We have much higher than 1%. If you look at any of the commodities prices, it's indicating a higher rate of inflation, which is great news.
We're going to hit stagflation. The world is crumbling down. Pastor Art's getting arrested. Our lives are being ruined. We're like I said at the top of the show, my sense when I go out there as an emergency responder, as a firefighter, as a paramedic, I'm going into the front lines of where government policy and people that are living on the edge meet. Okay. And it's getting bad out there. I get the sense that this society is holding on by a thread that could break any second now. Now we're talking about stagflation. and we're talking about a rise in prices, and we're talking about climate action, which obviously is going to shut down production and lead to higher prices on everything, not the kind of climate action maybe Brandon Kirby takes or that the Libertarian Party would take. I mean, there are, you know, the degree to which there's a climate emergency is the degree to which property rights are being violated from pollution and warming and rising sea levels and stuff. And then we deal with that with torts, not with paying a government a bunch of money and having them redistribute it to a bunch of green tech cronies. But, you know, so there are ways of dealing with catastrophe that are liberty oriented, right? That have nothing to do with government intervention and everything to do with justice and property rights. So we have all these terrible, we're adding fuel to the fire of the destruction of civilization here. And I'm seeing all over through the comments is a common theme of what do we do about this? What's our way out here? And of course, Vic Geo here is asking about Bitcoin, and he's about pure agorism. And agorism, for those that don't know, actually, Samuel Konkin is the guy who, that was one of the first books I read about libertarianism. I'm trying to remember, I think it was called The Libertarian Manifesto or something by Samuel Konkin. And it was all about agorism. And agorism is this idea that you just disengage from the state. You trade without the state's permission. You don't bother getting business licenses. You know, you form a community of people that is essentially exited the matrix and, you know, has taken the red pill and no longer pays taxes, no longer gets business licenses, no longer participates in the state institution, and they just make the state irrelevant to their lives by the way they live. And I think there's a lot of appeal to that, and I think eventually, I think it's going to come to that one way or the other, because as all these institutions fail and collapse under their own weight, I mean, that this is what we're going to need is a lot of agorism. And I think certainly Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a great solution, and that's probably the way forward. It doesn't stop us from recognizing that even if we are living agoristically, or even as an isolated hermit in the wood, we are doing that in reference to the controls that the state puts on us. And so the state needs to be pushed back against. Criminality needs to be addressed, okay? And the state is largely criminality. Any one of us who did what the state did, like if I had chased down Arthur Pawlowski, Pastor Art, today, after he finished his church service as a private citizen, and chased him off the road and put him in chains in front of everyone and hauled him off to my cage because he did something I didn't like, I would be rightly convicted of a serious felony, a serious criminal act. Yet the government does this kind of stuff with impunity. If I tax someone, if I took your money at threat of gunpoint, a threat of being jailed, and then even if I bought you something nice with half that money, bought you a little bit of healthcare or something, I would still be an armed felon. And yet the government does this with impunity. There's one standard for us, and there's one standard for them. Apparently, I can be charged with manslaughter if I have a house party and someone here catches COVID and dies of it. Yet all the people that die from government lockdowns, no politician or voter is going to go to jail for that, even though they're the ones that demanded that. So there's a double standard. There's one standard for me, one standard. So that has to be pushed back against, even in an agorist state where you're living in reference, trying to get away from the state, going to all the areas and all the nooks and crannies where the state isn't exerting control and trying to hide out there. Eventually the state's going to come in there and overtake your control, because they're a bunch of criminals, and criminals will overtake that. So that the government must be resisted somehow. Yeah. That the criminality must be existed in whatever form, whether it's institutionalized in government or private. And we need to find a way of solving that. But I do think agorism is a big part of the answer. What do you guys think?
Well, you know, I just want to add on. I agree with what you're saying. Like, there are some sins of confederacy where just because a large number of people are doing it with respect to the theft, that we overlook it. But a lot of the solutions that I'm seeing here in the comment section are resolving around cryptocurrency, and nobody's a bigger fan of cryptocurrency than I am. It's a fantastic thing, but if you take a look at Bitcoin, I really need to make this point that we're not ready as a society to go there. Bitcoin can only handle about 100 transactions per second, whereas Visa or MasterCard would do about 15,000 transactions per second. So Bitcoin is not.
Yeah, but but it's like the gold standard, right? I mean, there's a bunch of tokens that are attached to Bitcoin, all these other tokens. So Bitcoin doesn't need to handle all the transactions. All these other tokens can handle the transactions in a decentralized
in theory
way.
Yeah, like Ripple, for example, is one that could that it can handle 50,000 transactions per second. But when people say, well, you know, I want to transition to this, if we're agorists, well, how many people are actually libertarian? I have a concern. One, not only can the entire society not transition to where we're at in terms of the volume of transactions, what we would require. I'm also a little bit concerned about the volatility of Bitcoin, or not just Bitcoin, even Ripple. If we were to go to Ripple or Tron or Monero or Ethereum, any of these currencies, because of the volatility, you would have 1 week where you're very, very wealthy and 1 week where you're very, very poor. And that depends on the price of the cryptocurrency in terms of how much it can purchase. The real wage is what a lot of libertarian economists would talk about. The real wage of cryptocurrency is so fluctuating. It is so volatile. The standard deviation, I don't think it's the answer to our solution. It's the answer to our problem at this point. I'm a little bit concerned about it. Not that I'm not a huge fan of cryptocurrency, because I am. I'm a huge fan of liberating yourself and emancipating yourself from centralized banking. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I think it actually can contribute to agorism, but the volatility and its present capacity, I think, might be a little bit overstated in libertarian circles. I just want to add that hesitation that I have.
Well, I think a lot of the freedom of it is very interesting, and like now you can do country to country transfers without having to go through the wire transfer thing,
and that's wonderful.
As a tech professional, I don't think blockchain is the right technology for currency, in my personal opinion. I think blockchain is very useful in some other areas, but as you said, it's a very inefficient technology, and it gets more inefficient the longer it goes. But back to the agorism comment, and I hadn't actually heard that specific term before. And
by the way, Samuel Konkin, one of the great libertarians of our time, was born and raised here in Edmonton. So little known fact there.
Nice.
I didn't know
that. But he moved to California, I think. Yeah.
Why did he do that?
I grew up near Edmonton, just about an hour north.
California, hippies are very favorable to agorism until they form a state so large that it no longer tolerates agorism, and you have to flee to Texas or something.
And I actually think, I think that going on the political front has a very positive effect towards it. But I actually, my vision and the dream is that if the community starts doing things that the government was doing, at some point the government becomes irrelevant, and everybody says, why is the government doing that anyway? And so you got to fight it on multiple fronts. Like, it can't be on the political front. This is why, generally speaking, rural districts are far more libertarian than urban districts, let's say, because they don't see the government. They're like, when does the government ever come help me plow my field, or shoot the bear off my porch, or plowed my driveway, or done any of those things? I mean, they look after themselves. So I think it's a little bit easier for them. All right, we've got a bunch of questions on the census here. What's the libertarian take on participating in the 2021 census? I guess that's coming up, right? Well, obviously the census is terrible for the force that it represents. It is, I think the fine is $500 or 6 months in jail or something like that if you refuse to fill out the census. So we got a huge problem with that. Then there's the practical problem of, supplying the state with information that they then use to more effectively and efficiently rule you. So it's not great, but look,
there's no, let's say, shame in, there's no shame in when a mugger comes up to you and says, look, I'm going to kill you unless you tell me your birth date. Well, okay, give the mugger your birth date. I mean, there's no shame in giving the mugger that birth date, even if he's going to use it against you later. You got to try to protect yourself. But what do you guys think about the census?
I've got a lot of opinions on the census.
You know what? I usually invite them in and am very cordial, and I just give them all sorts of false information.
Well, yeah, it's online now, so you get a code and you're supposed to go online and do it. I'm just going to tell them that I did it, and you guys clearly procured bad software, which you always do. But right. one of our libertarians, he filled it out, and in the gender question, him and his partner, they put attack helicopter.
Yeah, nice.
Oh yeah, wasn't that there's a Rebel Media?
Lawrence Southern's thing used to be identifying as an attack helicopter.
Yeah, I had my sons knew about that. But so I agree with everything Tim said about how forcing us to do the census. Here's the thing: most of the stuff that's in the census they know already, and the problem is, and I've seen
you fill it your CRA.
Municipalities spend a bunch of money on consultants, and they make these reports based on the census. It's bad data, and they know it. And there's way better ways to get the data. I'm not a big fan of this, but I learned through some other things. But like, there's companies out there that can combine your cell phone data, your visa purchasing habits, and GM OnStar data, and they can get better than census level data down to 4 households.
People are, and I count myself in this, the amount of information I freely give up on social media about everything I'm doing, about, the fact that I'm having a rum and Coke right now, and their AI scrubbers can probably just pull that up and timestamp it and know everything about me. I mean, we're an open book, right? So it seems like trying to hide stuff from them is almost
why are they spending money on this now if they can get this data? And like, I was part of a community initiative where part of it was data gathering, but my take on it was, instead of giving the government the data, the community owns the data. The community is the gatekeepers of this data. The community decides what is appropriate use of this data, instead of, we're the government, we have a mandate, we'll take this data. Once they have it, they've got it, and they're going to do whatever they want with it, and that's the problem. The corruption goes that far, and they might not intentionally be corrupt. They might do it for a purpose. For example, like Fort McMurray, when they had the fire, so the evacuation took 3 times as long. TELUS ran some data, and they're like, yeah, your population is 3 times what it is, what your census says, which is obvious to any of us who know Alberta. But the census is completely useless.
Well, my take on it is I don't really care. In that, I find significant in terms of libertarian political philosophy. Tim, you and I were on a podcast maybe a couple months ago, I don't recall, where I shared the story of my stolen bicycle. And somebody stole my bike, and I love the bike. It was $1,000 bike. It was a terrific bike. And I could spend the rest of my life hunting that MFer down that took it. Or I could just go back to work, and I could work on my business, and I could do my thing. Now, it's the same thing with taxation. Right now, where we're at, we have 50% taxation. This is problematic for me. If we actually
you keep using that word problematic, and it's triggering.
This is troublesome. This is meddling.
It's evil, Brandon. It's evil. You are being enslaved right now.
Okay, but
slavery is not problematic. It's not troubling. It's absolute fucking evil. Sorry, pardon my language. Oh, by the way, Frigid Breeze, you can watch what you missed after the show is done. It will be saved and be on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching this. So there you go. Anyways, go on.
Well, okay. Sorry, so we have an absolute heinous fucking evil that's going on at 50%.
Yes, thank you.
But at 5%,
it was problematic, really, the language you were using. Sorry.
I had meddlesome language. But I really don't care, like, if somebody's stealing 5%. So if somebody wants my data, they want to know date of birth or how many people live in my household. honestly, I don't care. If it makes somebody happy and they want to ask me how many people live in my household, I'm okay, sure, whatever. You can know that information. It's the same thing with the bike, where I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to hunt down whoever stole it, because there's more productive things I could do with my time.
Yes,
there's more productive things that I could do than oppose a census. Now, is Canada involved with a genocide in North Yemen that I'm really pissed off about? Yeah, so I'm going to be pissed off about that. I'm going to vent my frustration about that. Is 50% of my paycheck being stolen right now? Yes, it is. And we can go on about inflation. We can go on about these regulatory frameworks, guns, free speech. I think I saw something in there about the media in the comment section. All these things are pissing me off, and I'm very, very pissed off about that. And I will work to combat that, because there are things that bother me. Now, in terms of somebody who wants to ask me about my date of birth and the number of people who live in my household, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, but why is it forced though? Why do we have to? Also, Keith Comar is asking where this is being streamed live. He wants to watch.
Oh, it's on our Facebook page. It's on my YouTube account.
Didn't we invite Keith to talk?
We invited him to come on this podcast. We sent him a link.
He just showed up in the chat there.
Oh, well. Okay. Get a load of him.
But I think it's why is it forced? And here's like statistical analysis. You don't actually need everyone to comply. You need a certain percentage of people, and you can extrapolate the data. And it's very useless data anyway. So why are they forcing us and charging us $500 fines and threatening with jail for not filling it out? I think it was perhaps something useful a long time ago, but the government already. Like, if you want to talk about government having too much access to data, there was a bill that was passed several years ago where they were allowed to have aggregate data from the major banks of our spending habits. Right. They know more from that than our census.
Do you remember the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership? It got quashed. That's one good thing Trump did. He quashed the TPP, but I remember the conservatives and liberals and everyone was on board with this. The conservatives were on board with it because it increased trade a little bit or something like that, like marginally, but it was still managed trade. But one of the terrible things about the TPP was that it mandated that that ISPs, internet service providers, that get all our data, share that data with governments. And it was in the back door. It was like, oh, this is going to increase trade, but oh, by the way, we're also going to extend U.S. IP worldwide and globally, and we're going to implement globalism, and we're going to demand that you that internet service providers share all the data, their data with us about you. So this is something that is obviously something that they want. They want this. They want as much data on you as possible. And the census is, I agree with you, it's probably the most clumsy and inefficient and useless way for them to collect data, given all the information we give them up freely every day ad nauseum. The question I have, and I think Edward Snowden made this case, is that, look, they have all this freaking information, but it's such an overwhelming amount of data that they need ways of pinpointing it. So, we're pretty safe in one sense in that we're part of a mob of people that are all, like they can't control it. They can't tunnel down on all our data all at the same time and use it. So, I'm kind of with Brandon in that, look, it's a concern. Like, I don't want them knowing stuff about me, but I don't see any reasonable way of operating in this world short of becoming a hermit and living off the grid of them not getting it. So at the end of the day, I have to admit that they're going to get it. And, I'm just going to have to deal with that fact and fight them when they try to use it to control me, I guess.
Yeah. The more data they have, the more private you actually become. Like, I've always been like, take all my data. Like, what are you going to do with it? I don't care. but there becomes a point like there's a big battle going on here in Penticton with the government. They took away funding from an addiction center, and one of the primary reasons they did that was because the addiction center wasn't giving them access to their patient data. and Interior Health didn't like that.
Right.
And so, there's, it's who's in control of the data, and how can we take back control of our data and become the gatekeepers of our data, and have some accountability to what that data is being used for.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Okay,
guys, but
let's.
go ahead.
No, I just wanted to transition real quickly because this is something interesting, and it kind of ties back to agorism, and brings up a point here. Jordan is like, is a voluntary society simply an engineering problem? Is it just a matter of developing technologies and mechanisms which make the state obsolete, as opposed to trying to achieve it through political means? And I think this is an interesting question because, this is a question that the Seasteading Institute, for example, is trying to solve. So the Seasteading Institute is an institute started by Milton Friedman's grandson, Patrick Friedman, and some others, like I think Joe Quirk is one of them. And what they're trying to do is actually build micronations out in international water. And the way they work, so they're working on the technology to develop these platforms, and they would have industry like algae harvesting and different things like that, where they can employ mass numbers of people to get like biofuels and cheap food and nutrition to people. And so they're working on this technology. Now, the beauty about seasteading is that you can take your property with you. So if you have a seastead, you maybe dock up next to one of these seasteaders, another seasteader who's created a system of governance or rules. Like, if you're going to attach to my seastead and be part of this community, here's the set of rules that you have to abide by. If you can't abide by them, well, you're going to have to undock and go somewhere else. And so it's kind of like a voluntary thing but here's the difference. You can actually take your property with you. So if we could take our property with us somehow and be under and choose our governance structure, right? So in other words, be able to select from a menu of governments, let's say, or private rule setters. Now we have a marketplace of governments, and so what these seasteaders are imagining will happen is eventually they'll have a bunch of these seasteads out there. They'll operate by different rules. If you don't like the rules at one, you'll move to another one, and that will create an incentive for you as a guy trying to make money off seasteading to have the best set of rules, which will probably be very libertarian in nature. And then you'll see all these people migrating out to the sea, and it'll put pressure on local governments around them. So that's one, I think, kind of exciting thing. Now, another thing I will say is I just saw a Facebook post from a fellow named Gabriel Shear. Gabriel made a bunch of money probably about a decade ago off of Bitcoin, just when Bitcoin spiked up to, I think, over $1,000. And he was one of the early adopters. He lived in Vancouver, and he moved down. There's this big push to get everyone down to Chile, where they had gone through a bunch of kind of free market economic reforms, and they were open for business, and they were trying to create a Galt's Gulch in Chile. And he moved down there and was trying to create some kind of escape for people who wanted to get away from their oppressive governments. And a lot of these nations are doing things like Honduras is creating economic free zones, for example, to try to attract people to their country. So that what they're doing is saying, okay, this tract of land here, if you're a corporation or you're a private entity or just an individual, and you want to pay us some money and take over this economic free zone, we'll leave you alone. We won't tax you. We won't impose our law on you. Obviously, big things like murder and any felonies will come in and enforce. But other than that, we're going to leave you alone to govern and run your community the way you want. So there's more of these economic free zones popping up, which I find exciting. Now, Gabriel tried his luck down in Chile, and for whatever reason, he's leaving that country, and he's actually coming back to Canada and coming to Saskatchewan. And he's looking at an abandoned town, and what he wants to do is purchase this town and get some investors. And I'm looking forward. He's going to be on my podcast whenever he can get his family back to Canada. So hopefully within a month or so. And he's going to buy this town, or get some investors to buy this town. They're going to create a private city. And so there's more and more of these private cities and private communities popping up. And obviously, if you live in a community, you got to pay for the roads, and you got to pay for the infrastructure that binds you all together. But again, it's a voluntary structure. It's a voluntary agreement where if the city owner, the infrastructure owner, isn't meeting their end of the bargain, you have immediate access to justice. And you say, look, if you're not plowing my streets and taking my garbage like you said you would, I don't have to wait 4 years to get my guy elected to change the rules. I get immediate access to justice right now. You're violating the terms of our agreement, and a court will enforce it and make sure I get justice. So my point is, all these things are starting to emerge as engineering technology. So I really like that comment about that Jordan put there. Is a voluntary society simply an engineering problem? And it probably is. And they're probably, as technology advances and these ideas come out that make government irrelevant, that we'll be able to find ways to, find more voluntary society.
I remember when I was looking up, because I was very curious about like how did municipalities and communities and everything, how did they originally get created back in the day, kind of thing. And I came across this concept of the kind of corporate municipalities, and apparently BC had, I was trying to Google it and I can't find it right now, had or has actual corporately owned towns. Like Tumbler Ridge was an example of that, where these municipal, and I think like what Elon Musk is doing with his Starship community down in Texas.
I know a few guys who bought skidooing cabins in Tumbler Ridge when the gold mine or coal mine or whatever it is went bust, and everyone moved out, and big like 1,600 square foot bungalows with double attached garage were going for like $15,000. So I know a bunch of guys who are sled necks who just kind of bought them as cabins to go sledding.
But I wonder if we can do this in Canada. We just don't know it. And I have a dream too of creating a principality with on First Nations land, and the province where that could happen is BC, because there aren't any treaties with most of the groups here. And so
a libertarian friend of mine does that. He gets a lot of his business income from an insurance company that he operates through an Indigenous. He's in the United States. He's in Oklahoma, but basically there's no tax, and he operates a lot on cryptocurrency, a lot on BitGold. And if you take a look at that, combined with you can have 3D printing for machine guns now. Like there's a lot of things that you can do that's off the grid, that's completely off the grid, where you don't have to be accountable to the government.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and here Justin is talking about the Free Province Project. They have the Free State Project in the U.S. where all the libertarians are moving to New Hampshire, and they're getting libertarians elected to the government there, and making some things happen. And it's pretty exciting, actually. They've had some pretty good success there. There was a movement, Justin, here in Canada that's kind of still, I don't know how much they're pushing it, but it was for libertarians to take over PEI, because PEI is actually, I think it's a smaller population, smaller area than Vancouver Island. And,
it's smaller for sure. It's my next door neighbor. My ex-girlfriend actually lives in PEI, so I started promoting the Free Province Project with being libertarian. Went to zero with a bullet, but she contacted me. She said, "What are you trying to do? Take over my province all of a sudden? Where's this coming from?" So anyways,
we're trying to take it over and leave you alone.
I like the idea. I like the idea of it. I think Vancouver Island strategically is a bit of a tough one, because it is so communist down there. And even if you did do that, you're still surrounded by Washington, Vancouver. And so I think if you take the interior of BC, like the Okanagan or the Kootenays, then you're close enough to Alberta. If we could actually kind of spread out from there.
Just in terms of the Constitution, you have to take over a province. So I think PEI would be the place to go. Now, what's interesting to me is if all the people who are part of the Free State Project simply became part of the Free Province Project, we'd be there.
Well, yeah. Okay. Look, here's the thing. If we try to people are asking for a path forward, right? And, I don't see a clear path forward here other than trying to make a bunch more libertarians and making that our most important project right now. Like the more libertarians we make, the better chance we have of things turning out the better, right? If things go to hell in a handbasket, at least the libertarians can form up and protect each other's backs. And who knows, maybe we'll pull a Hail Mary something off and be able to stop Canada from going down the gutter altogether. But, this idea of using the system and using, for example, like if we just vote hard enough, we're going to change things. If we just get the right guy in power, we're going to change things. Or if we use the Clarity Act, which allows us to secede, then we can have our own separate nation. I think those are fairly unrealistic. I don't think they're likely to happen. If you read the Clarity Act, what it says is, first of all, a provincial government has to put forward a referendum with a clear question of separation. Okay, so the question has to be clear. And now who gets to determine whether it's clear enough? You know, probably the people who can kibosh the whole thing. Then you have to have over 50% of the voters, I think it is, or maybe it's even 60%, clearly vote in favor of separating. Okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean everyone in the province, or just the people that are registered to vote, or just the people that actually vote? It's not clear about what that is, so that there can be all sorts of grounds to contend it on that issue. And then you have a clause in there that talks about all the potential stakeholders that might have a claim against separation. So you can imagine First Nations or neighboring provinces, or who knows, all the different people that would have a claim against separation who get to have a say in some sort of engagement thing. So actually separating with the Clarity Act, I think, is fairly unrealistic. So, you know, I am I guess sympathetic to these separatist sentiments and the parties like the Maverick Party and the Bloc Québécois that are kind of all about secession, or to some degree at least. But I think that's a long road to hoe if you go about it through the proper means. Now, I think a much more realistic thing that could happen, you know, I just don't see how the system sustains itself much longer. I think there's going to be chaos, and in that chaos, things can emerge. And you know, the law of Canada is going to go away. You know, I don't think it can be supported or enforced. And people are, you know, when they get through hard times, there's going to be chaos. So I'm interested to see what opportunities there are that we can help emerge from the chaos.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about separation, because I'm out of scotch, which Tim incorrectly identified as rum. And so I might have to separate from this conversation soon, and very soon.
Oh, I was going to say that too. I've been in this chair for 6.5 hours now from the AGM starting at 1 o'clock.
By the way, for those of you that are just joining us or joined us late, Keith McIntyre today was elected leader of the BC Libertarian Party. So I'm very excited to work with Keith McIntyre. And then we have Keith Komar, who was going to join us tonight. It was last minute, but he couldn't quite make it. Who's the leader of the Ontario Party. Yeah. So we've got
leader, I think he just stepped down too, didn't he?
Oh, is Keith stepped down? I didn't know that. Okay.
Keith stepped down?
Yeah, I think I saw that on Facebook.
Well, I was going to say, we need
two Keiths.
We needed a trifecta. I could have changed my name or found another Keith to replace me or something like that. We could have had a trifecta of Keiths leading us into the libertopian future. But anyways,
I'm a lousy Keith.
Awesome, guys. Well, okay, let's call it here. You know, I was fuming. I saw the Pastor Art getting arrested thing, and I needed to vent. And I appreciate you guys coming on with me at the last minute. I appreciate that I was able to break the news that Keith McIntyre just got elected leader. And I appreciate Brandon for putting down his Glenn Vittich and joining me and letting me rant and adding his 2 cents. And thank you all, by the way, for joining us. And I mean, look, guys, if it's not clear by now, the Liberals and Conservatives have had their shot at running this country. Okay. And we are where we are. True Conservatives aren't going to save this. We've fallen for true Conservatives for too long. We've had the Reform Party in the past. Eventually they all think that forming government is the most important thing. It's more important than making more libertarians. And they continually do this. They're like Lucy and we're Charlie Brown. You know, I remember when Harper came on the scene, and he was very friendly to libertarians, and everyone rushed to the new United Conservative, or to the Conservative Party of Canada. It was the PCs and the Reform Party that merged under Harper, and he was very friendly to the libertarians at first, and then eventually he disavowed us at a Manning convention and said we're the worst thing ever. This happens over and over again. It happened with the Wild Rose here. I suspect it's probably going to happen with the People's Party, you know, because they're interested in getting votes and forming government. And as soon as they get any success if you want to form government, if you get to a point where, hey, I'm getting some success and I might form government, well, you open up the tent and you get more votes. Because the most important thing a true conservative can do is get rid of Trudeau. That's number one priority, because Trudeau's the problem, right? Well, no, he's just a vacuous frat boy living his best life. He didn't create this system. He's just best at playing the game. And
Well said.
This is not going to change. This system needs to be upended and changed. We need a new constitution. We need a new contract with the government, and that's it. And there's only one party that's going to do that. So if what we're saying here appeals to you, please join the Libertarian Party of Canada. Go to libertarian.ca, join us. We're looking for candidates. We need people to stand up for freedom, true freedom, okay, on every level. You know, you can't just be against the lockdowns. You have to be against the income tax. You have to be against the drug war. You have to be against gun prohibition. You have to be against baby walker prohibitions and lawn dart prohibitions. Okay. It's everything, freedom right across the board. Even things, you know, like I said at the top of the show, look, I don't do drugs. I don't own a gun, and I'm an atheist. And yet I'm out here pushing for the freedom for people to smoke pot, shoot guns, and hold church services. Damn it. I mean, this isn't rocket science. If those people don't have freedom, I don't have freedom. My kids don't have freedom. So come on, libertarian.ca/join. Let's do this. Thank you so much, guys.
Absolutely. And any BC ones out there, we got a growing movement here. So let's do the provincial party too. And
awesome.
Tim, you're awesome. I've learned so much from you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
End broadcast. Boom.